And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network. Also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine, including Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. Denny Thompson is not here because you probably saw him on your TV earlier today as we're recording this on Thursday, March 30th, as Denny was front and center, Graham, at Anthony Richardson's Pro Day. You know, when we talk about Denny being Anthony Richardson's quarterback coach, quarterback trainer, I'm not sure, if people really either A, believed it or B, understood what that meant. And then you watch Pro Day today, and when Denny's going over the exact thing that Anthony Richardson's going to be doing pre-snap, I think that put it into perspective for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And Denny has been doing this quarterback training thing for a minute now, and he's really good at it, and we're glad to have him normally on the podcast.
Yeah, so. Look, he trained Brock Purdy, who's in the NFL now, had a great year with San Francisco. He's got a lot of college guys, including Carson Beck, who probably will be the Georgia starting quarterback, and, of course, Anthony Richardson. All right, Pro Day today. I'm sure you watched it or you saw the highlights. Your thoughts on how AR did down at Pro Day in Gainesville?
Oh, it was amazing. He killed it in Pro Day like we expected him to do, and that's stuff like the Combine and the Pro Day is stuff that Anthony Richardson is made to wow people on. Is it going to translate to when the pads are on Sunday afternoons in September, October, November, and December? I don't know. But in terms of doing what he's supposed to do throughout the draft and Florida's Pro Day, job well done.
Yeah, look, he didn't do anything like the 40-yard dash, the cone drills. He let his numbers at the Combine speak for that. Today was all about throwing the football. It's funny, the one throw that everybody is talking about is the one that hit the roof of the indoor practice facility. Look, I've been down there. I've been inside that thing. I heard Pat McAfee on his show talk about, that's a low roof. No, it's not. That is a large building they are in. Richardson unloaded that ball for it to hit the roof.
And not only did it hit the roof, but it hit it with some steam on it.
Yeah, and it came flying back.
It easily got to the roof. It's not like it was kind of, bare, like on its way. Like
no, the roof stopped it from going even further.
Right. It drilled the roof.
Yeah.
like really hard.
I mean, we know about Anthony Richardson's arm strength, but like we've talked about really the entirety of last year on Gator Bytes and really so far this offseason, not that Anthony Richardson can't throw the 75-yard deep route, but on 3rd and 7, can he hit the 8-yard button hook for a first down? And that's been a problem with him when it comes to accuracy. He knows that. He's talked about that with the NFL media, and that's something, Graham, that it appears to me that he's obviously been working on here in the last few months.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to be something he needs to continue to work on, because if you don't have that in the NFL and you don't have that consistency, you're in trouble. Those 4-yard, 5-yard, 6-yard passes keep you on the field. I mean, it keeps you on the field at any level of football, but particularly the NFL, because it's the league where, although, nowadays might not even seem like this, but still in theory, it's the league where big chunk plays are the hardest to come by. What does that mean? That means that 5 yards, 6 yards, 3 yards, that means incrementally moving up the field is paramount. I need to stay on the field on 3rd and 3. How am I going to do that? Because I'm absolutely nailing these 5-yard passes. That was an issue for him all year last year. Denny has said it on this podcast that was pretty much their main thing that they were working on fixing throughout the offseason. It seems like they've done a good job so far of doing that.
I mean, to bring it locally to Jacksonville, think about the Jaguars comeback against the Chargers. People always want to talk about, the Zay Jones long touchdown catch, and that was good, don't get me wrong. But that 27-0 drive at the end of the first half, Trevor Lawrence, dink and dunk, dink and dunk, dink 100%. And dunk, hit the 7-yarder, hit the 6-yarder, hit the 13-yarder. That opens up the 40-yarder later in the game.
It changed how the Chargers played defense because it forced them to be more aggressive because all of a sudden swing passes, wide receiver screens, running back screens, all of a sudden you're forcing defensive backs to come up and make tackles. And if you don't have that short area accuracy and you're not forcing DBs to do that, all of a sudden taking the roof off isn't there anymore. because they can play off, because they're like, throw that 2-yard out route or whatever. I'm not confident you're going to hit it every single time. Eventually, you're going to misfire, and you're going to give it right to us, and we're going to have a pick six, or you're going to be incomplete, get you behind the chains, and drive's going to be over anyways.
You are a recent alum of the University of Florida. You have the orange and blue blood pumping through your veins. So as an alum, as a Gator season ticket holder, and a objective broadcast journalist, well, let's be honest, I would think you are a Florida Gator fan, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. How will Anthony Richardson 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now be remembered as a Florida Gator? Or was the sample size just simply too small and he won't come to mind a decade from now?
I think it'll be viewed as, in the positive light, I think you could view him as kind of a little bit of a light in a dark time of Gator football. In the negative light, you could look at, he just struggled to read defenses, or he misfired. Like we just said, he struggled with accuracy or whatever. I don't know how much of that is necessarily fair. I do think that it'll be viewed as what could have been in a whole lot of ways.
You hold me, stop you right there. You just said it. What could have been. And I'll tell you why I think it's going to be that. I think he's going to do really well in the NFL. And I think people are going to look at him 5 years from now when he's making his second or third Pro Bowl team and be like, he only started 12 games at Florida, or whatever it is, 13 games at Florida. He only won 6 games as a starting quarterback at Florida. Right. I think people in 5 years are going to be shocked by that.
Yeah, 100%. If you're not a Gator fan, you're going to be like, how in the world did this guy not bring them to a Final Four or something?
Right.
At some point. And again, the answer to that is twofold. It's one of the answers is what you just said. He had such a tiny sample size of being Florida's QB1, their unquestioned QB1, because 2021, we kind of know how that went back and forth between Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. The sample size is so small, first of all. And then also, again, he was just at Florida at such a time where Florida was devoid of talent and just not winning a lot of games regardless of who the QB was, and Georgia's the superior rival right now, and Florida State's better right now, and it sucks. To me, the biggest part that sucks about Anthony's time at Florida is that he couldn't have been around at a time where there was more talent around him.
I'm scrolling through here about Anthony Richardson, and I'm going back to the Florida Gator quarterback draft history. And Rex Grossman was a first-round pick. Tim Tebow was a first-round pick, but they both went in the 20s, I want to say. Grossman, I know Tebow went like 24th to Denver, and I'm trying to find Grossman. He was number 22 to Chicago. So assuming Anthony Richardson goes above the 22nd pick, and I think that's a safe assumption.
Very safe.
Graham, I'm scrolling. I'm to 1990. I mean, I don't know how far back we have to go. Anthony Richardson could very well be the highest drafted Florida Gator quarterback in the history of the Florida Gator program.
I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion
that he will be.
That he's going to be, yeah.
And he won 6 games.
I know. That speaks to two things. First of all, that speaks to how ridiculously talented he is.
Mm-hmm.
We can argue all day about the production. I think it really just comes down to two different schools of thought when drafting guys, and that's a whole different discussion that we don't have to have right now. But regardless, it does speak to the ridiculous level of athlete and the ridiculous talent that he is. And that's inarguable. I think everybody agrees that this dude, there's not many made like this dude. The second thing it speaks to is just how much evaluating quarterbacks has changed in general, and how little college production is even valued in the first place.
Right.
I mean, I know he got hurt, but like Hendon Hooker is not even considered close to the prospect Anthony Richardson is. And Hendon Hooker was a really strong Heisman candidate before he got injured. So it just shows that college production, unless it goes along with being a great prospect and everything that entails, college production doesn't even matter anymore in terms of evaluating a quarterback.
John Reeves was drafted number 14 overall in 1972. Richardson probably will go before number 14.
I would think he will.
He's about to make history. And look, I was thinking about this earlier today, and I want to get into a couple of other things regarding Richardson and the game by Osiris Torrance, Gravon Dexter. We're going to spend some time on some other guys that were there at Pro Day today. But it goes back to something that Pat McAfee said on his show. Dan Orlovsky has said it on ESPN as well. Richardson, great talent, but it also goes to show you, and you alluded to this earlier a little bit, probably the lack thereof of players around him.
Yes.
When no offense to Ricky Pearsall, we talked about this last week. When he's your best wide receiver, that's not a good place to be.
Correct.
Justin Shorter, nice player. I don't think he's scared opposing defenses. Keon Zipper, which he's hurt now, which is terrible, but last year didn't keep D coordinators up at night. I mean, other than those two running backs, which are both very young running backs in that offensive line, you think about tight ends, wide receivers, it's not as if Anthony Richardson was throwing to any All-Americans out there.
And we talked about this last week. There's not – he never had the guy that he could dump the ball off for 2 to 3 yards, and that guy would make one DB miss and then be to the house.
Right.
If anyone was taking the ball to the house from 60, 70 yards out, it was going to be Anthony Richardson. Nobody else had that type of elite. I mean, Trevor Etienne does, but we're talking about people to throw the ball to down the field.
Yeah, wide receivers, tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, those guys just weren't on the roster. And there's some young guys now that might have the capability to be those guys, but we'll see. Aiden Mizell, Eugene Wilson, Andy Jean. Those guys, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about those guys. But as of right now, we haven't seen a guy like that in a Gator uniform since Antonio Callaway. He would have been the last one.
And I had to go back because I didn't want to say it out of turn, but I thought this was right. You have to go back to 1967. I think people will be surprised by this. Spurrier actually did go 3rd overall in 1967.
Wow.
Out of Florida.
Wow.
I thought he was top 10. I didn't realize he was number 3. But even so, I mean, you're talking 56 years since Steve Spurrier was drafted. Assuming Anthony Richardson doesn't go 1 or 2, he will be second behind Spurrier, who did indeed go number 3 in 1967. And I love Spurrier. It was a terrible pick at number 3. It just did not work out for him in San Francisco. There is no question about that. Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good Dr. Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. We talk about Anthony Richardson, and that's certainly why all the 80 media credentialed members were there today. That's why a majority of the coaches were there today. He wasn't the only guy on display. Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke were down in Gainesville, and I know who they were looking at. And they were looking at Osiris Torrance.
100%.
In fact, ESPN had a mock draft that came out earlier this week, had Osiris Torrance coming to Jacksonville with the 24th pick. I was talking to Jacob Rudner of 247sports.com. He's going to join me tonight on Hacker After Dark. He was in attendance today at Richardson's Pro Day, and he wrote a story for 24/7. Did Osiris Torrance, even as an offensive guard, have the biggest one-year mark on Florida football that maybe anybody's ever had? Ryan Smith, the corner from Utah, who was part of the 06 title team, I think you could argue. But Osiris Torrance was a grad transfer, was basically a one-year rental, or not a transfer. We knew he was only going to be there 1 year. He could have gone pro last year. He came into Florida with the understanding that if things went his way, he was only going to be there for a year. Consensus All-American. Led an offensive line that was a dominant O-line to help Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne. Now is a projected first-round pick. He just got the brick for him yesterday at the Gator Complex as a consensus All-American. They had that display yesterday for Osiris Torrance. I personally, Graham, would love the Jaguars to draft Osiris Torrance at 24. I'm just not sure if he's going to be there or not.
Yeah, and I'll give you a number for Osiris Torrance that's big, and I think you already know this number. 3 years of college football, 0 sacks allowed.
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you need?
You wonder how a guy like that ended up at Louisiana. And Napier even alluded to that.
Well, he's not athletically. There are other linemen that would stand out more athletically in like a combine or a pro day setting. But man, you turn on the tape, there's no interior guard in college football that impresses more than O'Cyrus Torrence. He just doesn't lose reps. I mean, just look at him in his matchup, game after game after game, no matter who he's going against, he does not lose reps. It's that simple.
Richardson's going to be a first rounder. Torrence is going to be a first rounder more than likely. I think Ravon Dexter's maybe late first, early to mid second.
He'll be picked between like 30 and 45.
Yeah, he'll be, and he looked all of the part today.
That guy's the opposite of Torrence. Left some production to be desired, but as far as an athlete and what he's capable of, whew, that dude's a beast.
All right, so then those three, right? Richardson, Torrence, Dexter. Trey Dean will get drafted. That's 4. Rashad Torrence will get drafted. That's 5. Justin Short will get drafted. That's 6. Ventrell Miller will get drafted. That's 7. Is that it? Richard Garage will get drafted.
Yes.
That's 8. It's 8 guys that are going to get drafted. Why was Florida so bad last year?
It's a great mystery, and I think the answer lies on, other than Torrence, the 2 guys that are getting drafted high are getting drafted high because of potential, not because of production.
Yeah, I agree. Dexter, I think, will be a much better pro than he was in Gainesville.
And you said you think Richardson will be as well.
Yeah.
So that tells you a couple things. That tells you that there was talent on the roster. It is now, were there positions where you wanted more talent and more depth? Absolutely. But it isn't like the entire roster belongs at USF.
Right.
Nothing against USF, but you get what I mean.
That roster should not have lost to Vanderbilt.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Correct. That's an easier way to say that. That roster had no business losing that. That Vanderbilt game is one of the worst Florida losses in the history of the program.
So is that a Napier coaching issue? Not getting him fired up to play, not getting him ready?
I would say yes. Because I think that at a different point in the year, with the same exact roster, I don't particularly remember who was hurt by that point, who was playing and all that, but if you were to just have the same exact guys play, and let's say you had them play the same week that they played Utah, and it was at Vanderbilt, it was week 1, I think they'd have won that game by 25 points. So if that's the case, then yes, it is on coaching.
And look, you mentioned Utah. I didn't even mention Amari Burney, who he was a pro day today. I don't know if he'll get drafted or not, but he made the game-winning interception against Utah. He's another guy, good player. Could I see Amari Burney going in round 6, round 7? Of course.
Yeah.
So you could talk about 9 guys potentially getting drafted from the Gator football team last year. Yeah, it was very, very unfortunate. What isn't unfortunate is this, though. NFL Network was in Gainesville today. ESPN was in Gainesville today. SEC Network was in Gainesville today. Everybody was talking Anthony Richardson. The practice facility, all the Twitter and social media that was at University of Florida's pro day today. Could Napier use that at all? I know he talked to the media today. I mean, is that something you can try to build on, having all that exposure today?
You should. You damn well better. If you're not, what the hell are you doing? You think Saban doesn't do that when the whole country's in Tuscaloosa to watch pro day after pro day after pro day, year after year after year?
Yeah.
He damn well should be. Georgia's doing the same thing. Kirby Smart, look, this is who you're going to be in 3 years. If you come play for me, he should be.
And by the way, you 150 media members, why don't you come take a gander at our brand new football-only facility and just maybe report on that a little bit?
Yes, 100%. Give me some free advertising for this program, please.
And that's what good players do when you have pro day like that. They'll, you know what? Brenton Cox, he's another guy. Now, he only played 8 games, but Brenton Cox will probably be the 10th guy that gets drafted. But yeah, you have all the media members there. Come on over, take a look at what we got cooking over here with the Gator football facility. The Brenton Cox thing, they dismissed him, but he came back and was able to work out here at Pro Day at the University of Florida. It looks like an amends has been made. I guess Napier said today that was always the deal, they told him they would welcome him back to work out for the scouts. So whatever got Brenton Cox dismissed from the team after the Georgia game,
Still a weird situation.
it was weird, but it couldn't have been egregious, right? Because they welcomed him back today to Pro Day.
Yeah, it was. I'm a little bit confused on what happened there, and there's something going on.
There's all kinds of. I heard probably 5 different stories. I imagine one of them is probably true. The other 4 aren't. I'm not going to say what I heard because I've not confirmed them. But it's just weird that thanks but no thanks. You're not wanted here for the last 4 games of the year, but you can come on back and work out at Pro Day in March.
It's an odd situation. It's a little. I know we're not talking about basketball right now, but it's kind of like that. Those like 2 to 3 games where Kawasi Reeves just didn't play.
Right.
Where it's kind of like, and Todd Golden's explanation was like, he was the victim of me messing up some of my lineups. Like, what? No, it's not. Come on. There's 5 people on the court. You're telling me you forgot Kawasi Reeves? It was kind of, but I know we're not talking about that right now, but it was sort of a similar thing with Brenton Cox where it's like, okay, it's something that's egregious enough to kick him off the team in the middle of the year with a month left to play in the season. But once it's time for him to work out and do his pro day and all that, yeah, come on back, man. It's fine.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
It's a strange situation. I don't know.
But apparently Brenton Cox looked the part today. He said he was one of the guys that kind of stood out during his workout there at Florida Gator Pro Day. Well, a couple segments left here on the Gator Bytes podcast. Again, Southeast Orthopedic Specialists brings it to you. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. I had Josh Pate on Hacker After Dark earlier this week. Josh Pate, for college football fans, CBS Sports HQ. He does the Late Kick podcast, Late Kick Live. I'm sure you've seen videos of his on social media. He's got a really strong YouTube channel, and I just enjoy his podcast. I think he does a great, great job with the Late Kick Live podcast. Had him on to talk Florida, Florida State, and Miami. And when we got to the Gators, he said something. I'm not sure if you tweeted this out on the 1010XL Twitter feed, but the soundbite went out on our social media channel.
That was courtesy of our good friend Mia O'Brien.
Oh, there you go. Mia O'Brien did that. Absolutely. Of all the Power 5 programs, and then this is a guy that covers the entire world of college football for CBS Sports. He said of all the Power 5 programs right now, he would put the biggest question mark, not necessarily in a bad way or a good way. He just phrased it, the biggest question mark, hands in the air, like, which way are they going to go at the University of Florida? I thought that was pretty telling. There's a lot of Power 5 programs with a lot of questions right now. Here's a guy that covers it nationally every day that says he believes Florida has the biggest question mark going into 2023.
And I think he's right. The biggest, what the hell is this team? Who are they? Who are they? How good are they? Because I think there's a world. We went through the schedule last time we talked on this podcast. There's a world where they might win. They might have a really good season and win 8 to 9 games.
If you get 8-4 right now with that schedule, I would take it every day of the week.
Right, and
every day of the week.
It may not be a super likely world, but I think we could both agree there is a world where it could happen. Right, where Mertz just finds himself and Pearsall is legit, and that backfield is still really good. Like, there's a world where they could win.
But the amazing thing about that, Graham, is people watching this right now, and they might even be commenting on this right now, and people listening to it. You say 8-4. Oh, 8-4. That's not going to be good enough. Got to look at reality, man. They won
100%.
6 games last year, and the schedule is harder this year. And look at the people they've lost. We just rattled off 10 guys that might get drafted in the NFL. You're going to replace that with a tougher schedule, knowing you only won 6 games last year. You have to have realistic expectations.
And you're replacing it with a decent amount of inexperience, too.
Good high school players, but obviously.
But inexperienced,
yes.
Right. And the flip side of that, too, there's a world where they could win 8 to 9. There's a world where they could win 5.
Yeah. I think they'll be an underdog in 7 of them right now.
I don't know that there is a team, and this goes to Josh's point, I don't know that there's a team in the Power 5 that has a bigger range of games they could win or could lose. Because we know how college football is. A lot of games you can pencil in right now, and you're going to be correct in October or November of the outcome of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Florida has a lot of coin flip games. And we kind of debated last time, is it a coin flip or is it, a little bit in favor of the opponent or the Gators or whatever, but you get what I mean. Games that could very easily go either way. Florida's got so many of those, man. And then you also got to worry about the bigger picture in terms of recruiting, and is the new facility and everything really panning out to bring in new recruits and get them to not just visit and put a hat on the table, but sign. All of that is unknown in Florida. And so I think Josh is absolutely right when he says it's the biggest question mark in the Power Five.
Quickly, as a Gator alum, if they go 8-4, I don't care about the bowl game, because last year showed you the bowl games are what they are. Portal, guys leaving for the draft. A lot of people do not play in the early bowl games. So that would mean 6-6 last year, 8-4 this year. That would give Napier a 14-10 mark in 2 regular seasons. Does he need to win in year 3? Or would he be in trouble at that point?
What does win mean?
More than 8 wins.
So just get better each year.
Get better each year.
Get extra wins every year. Yeah, I would agree. I think at 8-4, that is a benchmark of job pretty well done.
Well, and real quick, think about this. So 8-4, you play Utah, you play LSU, you play Georgia, you play Tennessee, you play Kentucky, you play Florida State, you're at South Carolina. That's 7. 8-4 means you're winning 3 of those.
At least.
3 of those. Utah, Tennessee, Kentucky, at South Carolina, LSU, Georgia, Florida State. And that assumes that you beat Arkansas, Missouri, Vanderbilt.
Missouri at their place, which always gives them problems.
Right, you got to go into Missouri and win. Arkansas, who knows about Arkansas? I mean, I got to tell you right now that Florida's going to beat Arkansas? Of course not. I have no idea.
They got to go to Fayetteville, right?
No, Arkansas comes to Gainesville. Okay. But yeah, you find me 8 wins on that schedule, man. It's tough. So if they do 8-4, I think Gator fans need to give a tip of the cap to Billy Napier. To me, that's my goal. If I'm a Florida fan, a realistic Florida fan, 8-4. Anything better than 8-4 to me is gravy, hot fudge on the Sunday, whatever verbiage you want to describe.
So let me stop you there, because I agree with you. I agree with everything you just said. You're absolutely right. 8-4 would be a great season, and it would be reason for us to feel good about Billy Napier as Florida fans, as whoever. However, being that the next year would be year number 3, if year 3 he also goes 8-4 or gets worse, where would you be at that point? Because it's all about, I don't want to project too far into the future. That we're looking 2 years and more down the road. I get it. But when it comes to building a program, at some point you need to be getting better every single year.
Florida fans don't want to hear this, but this is the reality, and we got to go quick here. You look at what Mike Norvell did in Tallahassee. Mike Norvell was awful in year 1, was awful in year 2. In year 3, you gave him 3 years. Now Mike Norvell, arguably, is the best coach in the state of Florida. Arguably. And I think if you're in Coral Gables with Mario Cristobal, and if you're in Gainesville with Billy Napier, you got to really look at that. Year 1 was a struggle for both. Odds are, just like in Tallahassee, year 2 may be a struggle for both. Year 3, I think Norvell laid the blueprint. And that's where you need to really find yourself. You need to give the guy 3 years. And at that point, you're going to know. And by the way, year 3 right now, Florida's recruiting class is shaping up to be a top 5 class. Long time down the road, although you think about it, I mean, DJ Lagway can sign on the dotted line with Florida in 8 months.
There's been more than 1 year in the past, though, where at this point, we've had a class shaping up to be really good, and it didn't end up being that way.
Agreed. So. But people say, well, it's so far away from DJ Lagway. Well, the early signing period's 8 months away. It's not 18 months away. You got to keep DJ Lagway for 8 months. And they just got another commitment from Georgia, a 3-star that picked Florida over Tennessee.
Davis.
Yeah, picked Florida over Tennessee and Kentucky. Florida was losing those battles recently. They haven't won a lot of recruiting battles against Tennessee. They won that one. And DJ Lagway is the key. So the whole point in this is get through 2023. 8-4 would be great. I would take 7-5. 6-6 or worse, then I think Gator fans, you have a right to be upset. get to 2024, get to year 3 in the program, get DJ Lagway, a 5-star quarterback on campus, and then you might start cooking a little bit.
Yes, but you need to start making those potential top 5 classes. You need to make them real top 5 classes. And preferably, give me 3. Give me number 3. Give me number 4 overall. I don't need this to wade into 6 or 7 range.
Well, that's the reality of it. You're not going to beat Georgia. Georgia's getting number 1 classes every year. When you're getting number 9 classes every year, you see that on the field
100%
in October here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's clear and obvious. I agree with everything you said. All I ask for is steady improvement. Whatever that means, each year in the next few years under Billy Napier need to be better than the year before.
So with that logic, you'd be okay with 7-5 this year?
I wouldn't be okay with it. I wouldn't love it, but
it would be an improvement.
I wouldn't want to fire him is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, they're not firing him after year 2.
I agree. No.
Gator fans, you need to rationalize that. Unless they go like 2-10, Billy Napier's your coach in 2024.
Scott Strickland's not firing him, but you know that the fan base fires guys before the AD does quite a bit.
Yeah.
And typically, if the fan base fires a guy, he actually gets fired within about a year.
Hard to believe. We're 2 weeks from tonight. 2 weeks from the orange and blue game as spring football begins to make the turn for home. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Graham, I enjoyed this, man. We'll do it again next week.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Gator Bytes Podcast, 1010XL.com, and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.